Hey guys, how's it going? Alex Scott here with TrueFire.com. Thank you guys so much for checking out another one of our videos. Now, as you guys might know, I am a full-time professional working musician. I do a lot of my work here in my home studio, writing music for video games, working on records, all this kind of stuff. But I also gig quite a bit. I'm in a couple of wedding bands here in New York City. I do cover gigs, I do tours occasionally. And so recently, I was learning a bunch of tunes for a classic rock cover gig. Hendrix, Van Halen, this kind of stuff. And I noticed something kind of interesting. When we think of like guitar-centric music, like rock and hard rock, all this kind of stuff, we usually think of very like guitar keys, right? Keys like E and A and G and D, and they're associated like major and minor chords. It's kind of how we think of guitar, right? But if you actually go back to a lot of these really great classic rock and hard rock records and start learning them note for note, you start to realize, hang on a second, these tunes are in like E flat and A flat and even D flat and all these kind of weird keys. And that is because a lot of these artists would tune their guitars down a half step, or sometimes even more, a whole step, or even more than that occasionally. The most common one, though, was tuning their guitar down a half step to E flat. So E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, and then E flat, which is a mouthful, right? And you would think would really like screw up your perspective on the instrument. But it actually has a ton of really, really interesting advantages. Now, I have certainly known about this for a long time. Like I've encountered tunes like this before, and I knew it was kind of a thing with guitar players, but I didn't realize there were so many different advantages to tuning your guitar this way. And so as I kind of looked into it, just out of my own curiosity, I wanted to make a video for you guys sharing some of the things that I've learned, because I think it's really, really interesting. But before we get into that, I want to play you guys a tune that I put together real quick. I called this tune Team C. It's just kind of a little funk thing, and played some drums and keys, guitar, and all this, you'll see. But I just want to play it for you guys, and there is a reason I'm playing it. We'll circle back around to it at the end of the video. But just check it out, pay attention to the tone of the instruments, and if you like it, let me know in the comments. So there you go, cool little funky thing, Team C. As I said, we're going to talk about it again before the end of the video, but you know, I hope you guys dug it. It was really fun to put together. So anyways, let's talk about this E-flat tuning thing, right? Why in the world would you want to take your whole instrument and retune it like this? Well, there's kind of some myths and legends out there about why guys do this. It's like, oh, it's like more resonant with spirituality, and oh, it objectively sounds better on the radio. It's like, you know, a lot of reasons are given, but that is not actually necessarily the case. There are some tone reasons, and we will get into that as kind of the last set of things I want to talk about. But first, and much more commonly, there's actually a lot of practical consideration that goes into this, and some very cool things that you might not have thought of that come out as really big advantages to tuning your instrument this way. The first kind of set of things is the whole idea of transposition. Now, the word transposition just means taking something that is in one key and putting it in another key. So taking a melody that was written in C and playing it in D would be transposing that melody from C up to D. And we have to do this a lot as musicians, especially if you're out playing shows or playing with a lot of people. Sometimes people know cover tunes in a different key than what you learned it in. Maybe the original is in G, but they do it in A, whatever. This is something we encounter a lot. You can tune your guitar down to E flat and suddenly have access to a lot of your open chords and much more familiar patterns on your instrument that will make it a little bit easier to play in those keys. But that's not even the main reason why a lot of rock guys do it. What's really happening here with this idea of transposition is vocal range. Male singers typically don't have as high of a range as female singers do. And so there are certain keys, and like depending on where your voice falls in terms of your own vocal range, there are some keys that might be really, really challenging. For instance, A is a key that a lot of male vocalists typically struggle with. And because of that, tuning your guitar down a half step means that you can play all your favorite cowboy chords, you can play all these great shapes and patterns, but it's gonna make it a lot easier on your voice. That little bit, just a half step, goes a long way in opening up the top end of your range. It can be the difference between you barely being able to hit a note and being able to comfortably hit that note at the top end of a melody. So that's a big reason why a lot of guys do it, is just for the practical reason of moving their songs into keys that make it easier for them to sing with a wider part of their vocal range. So transposition is a big part of it. Another big part of it is playability of the instrument itself. Now, this is one that I really did not think about when I was learning about some of this stuff. Now, if you've ever played really light gauge strings, like if you're somebody who does a lot of bending, pre-bending, uses these kinds of techniques, or like has a floating bridge that's set up to do dive bombs and stuff, you typically use lighter gauge strings because they're easier to manipulate, they're easier to do bends, right? But they have some drawbacks. They tend to buzz a little bit easier, they don't stay in tune quite as well, their output is a little bit lower because there's just less metal moving around in the field of the pickup. You get a little bit less gain out of them, they're more trebly sounding, they have more top end, a little bit less low end. So guys who miss those things will then go to heavier gauge strings. However, those have their own drawbacks in that the heavier gauge string you go, the more tension is on the instrument. And while you may get better tone, it's harder to play, it's harder to do bends, they're just harder on your hands, generally speaking. So when you down tune like this, when you tune down to E flat, suddenly it lets you kind of get the best of both worlds, because when you tune down, there's less tension on the entire instrument. So you can actually go up to 10s, 11s, even 12s, and have them feel a lot more like, you know, those lighter gauge strings that are a lot easier on your hands to play. And you still retain all the benefits of those heavier gauge strings, longer sustain, more output, etc., all of the stuff I just mentioned. Now, of course, the number one reason that people think guys tune down to E flat has everything to do with tone, right? So there's a whole kind of belief out there that if you tune your instrument to 432 hertz instead of 440 hertz, it somehow resonates more with like the human soul or the earth or something. I'm not an expert on that stuff. That is not why we tune down to E flat. The 440 is A and 432 is in between an A and an A flat, and A flat's actually 415, I just looked it up. So it doesn't have anything to do with that. There's also a lot of guys who claim that it just objectively sounds better, and there may actually kind of be something to that, depending on how you look at it. Lower frequencies tend to carry more easily, and of course there's all kinds of words or adjectives that we associate with lower pitches and lower geared frequency spectrums that a lot of guys like. Things like warm and thick and rich. These are all words that usually describe more of a presence in the lower frequencies. So if you think about it from that perspective, yeah, sure, you could argue that E flat is a warmer, richer sound, but where it does raise some really interesting points is when you look at it in the context of other music. So let's think about if you're an artist whose stuff is getting played on the radio and you're in a genre like a rock or a pop rock or something where a lot of the songs are going to be in keys, again, like we talked about at the beginning, these guitar keys, and you're drop tuning and playing things in the flatted versions of those keys, it might help your song stand out a little bit amongst the crowd. And there is a lot to suggest that that's why some artists have done it historically, to try to help their songs pop a little bit more and stand out and sound unique. And I do think that there is something to that. Now, to prove this point, or not to prove it, but just to give you an example of this, I'm gonna play the tune that we heard at the beginning, this cool Team C funk tune that I put together. We're gonna play that again, and I want you guys to listen to it. I don't want you to skip back quite yet. I just want you guys to listen to it again real quick. So now, if you went back and compared the two, you will notice that the one that we just listened to is a half step lower than the one that we listened to at the beginning. I intentionally spaced them out through the video so that you wouldn't hear them side by side, because obviously it's immediately easy to hear two things as to which one is lower pitch, right? That's not hard. So I spaced them out. So we heard it in E the first time around. The second time around, I pitched the whole thing down to E flat. I didn't down tune because I wanted them to be truly identical, but I used really high quality software to drop the raw signal of the guitar and the bass, and then I dropped the MIDI data for the keys down into that whole thing is now in E flat. So I only do that to give you guys kind of a reference point in this video where you can A, B, and swap back and forth, because they're truly identical performances. The only thing that's different is the bass tone of the whole thing. And I'm not even gonna pass judgment on it. I do think that the E flat version, there is something to it that sounds a little warmer and richer. That could be placebo, just because I'm intentionally like doing this kind of mini experiment to do, to A/B them. But I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Please let me, does one of those two versions stand out to you more as like, oh, this sounds better, beyond just the takes, right? I'm really curious to see how you guys hear this, because I kind of see this argument from both sides. Warmer, richer, sure. Lower pitches, sure. That makes sense in a science-y way, but this stuff is also subjective, right? So really, at the end of the day, I think if you're considering downtuning, if you're considering doing stuff in E flat, you should approach it from the perspective of, will this help my vocal range? Do I want to go to heavier gauge strings and still be able to, have good kind of ease of playability on my instrument? All of those more practical reasons, I think, make more sense. I think if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, if you think it sounds better, awesome. But that is where it gets a little bit more debatable. So anyways, I hope you guys found this as interesting as I did. That's really why I put this video together, because I was like, this is just there's so many different angles here. I really had never thought about it this way. So I just thought it was cool. Hope you guys learned something. But in any case, hey, if you want to learn more stuff about guitar, you should head over to a little website called TrueFire.com. It's an incredible library of amazing courses from some of the best guitar players on planet Earth. We offer individual courses for sale on their own. We offer an all-access membership. We also have some great song lessons, specifically some song lessons that use E-flat tuning. The one that comes to mind is 1979 by Smashing Pumpkins. Fantastic song, and the whole thing is in drop E-flat tuning. I actually produced all the backing tracks for that song, also taught by a dear friend of mine named Callum Bear. He's a great player. So yeah, TrueFire.com, amazing resource. Definitely go check it out. Again, my name is Alex Scott. Thank you guys so much for watching another one of our videos. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, all the YouTube-y stuff. It really helps us out and get these videos out to more people. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next one.